We are going to talk about a child's view of giving. Now, the reason why I sort of thought that that would be a good idea to talk about, I guess mainly people ask me to talk when they want to hear something psychological, right? Or some sort of idea about how they should approach things from a healthy psychological perspective, okay? So when it comes to giving, it's an interesting thing because most parents struggle with trying to educate their children to be givers, okay? And most people will describe their greatest hope for their children as either being very happy all the time, good luck with that one, or being real givers in society, right? When they kind of go a little bit higher in their expectations, they say, I want my child to be a real giver in society. I want them to really understand that they need to contribute to society and be real givers, okay? And they often get a little bit overexcited about that, if I'm honest, because children don't come out as givers, right? And we'll talk about what I mean. Children are naturally, and sorry, before I go to that, the reason why I think it's so important to understand this is because if you pitch a little bit too high, children get very confused, okay? Everybody gets confused if you speak beyond their language or beyond their understanding. But parents have a very great tendency to do that. And they feel like, but I've told you, so you know. I've showed you this, so you know. But it takes children quite a while to know what you think they're supposed to know. So that's why I think I wanted to sort of talk about where children are at different ages and how we can help them, okay? Okay, so the first thing is children are naturally extremely self-centered. When I say extremely, I mean extremely, almost exclusively self-centered. Okay, we have a very good example over there. Okay, I'm assuming he's a boy. Is that right? Okay, good. Phew. He looks like he's dressed like a boy. He's pretty, but he's a boy. Okay, so when he was born, and he was keeping you up at night, I'm presuming, and still is, he has absolutely no qualms about that. He doesn't have any guilt. He doesn't have any sort of niggling feelings of I really shouldn't be doing that. He has no awareness of your feelings of frustration or exhaustion or wanting to kind of leave somewhere and be neglectful or whatever it is, okay, leave him behind. He has no awareness of that. All he has an awareness of is he has needs. He needs those needs to be met. He doesn't even have a real awareness of that. He has a sense of it. I have needs, and how do I get them met? This is how I do it. I cry, I have an instinct to cry. I learn more and more. He's probably learning more and more how to get his needs met, right? He'll smile at you, he'll laugh at you, he'll try to get your attention in certain ways. He's learning it. He hasn't in any way gotten to the point where he's actually thinking about your needs, not even remotely. Okay, and children are as self-centered as that, and I brought a little tool here to explain this to you. They're as self-centered as that, at least till the age of 5. Now, what do I mean by that? Okay, so I have my little props here, and I hope you can see them. Okay, and we're going to do the Sally. I'm going to teach you about the Sally Ann test. Okay, now this is a wonderful, wonderful, fun thing to do with your child because it really helps to teach you what children are up to. Okay, so sometimes you have a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old, and you kind of look at them and you think, why is this child behaving in this way? Why is this child so unkind? Why is this child not sharing? Why does this child not see? Why is this child biting? Why is this child hitting other people over the head? What is going on here? Okay, and it's very helpful to understand the following thing. There's something called theory of mind. This is such a psychological concept, but it's a very important thing for parents to understand. Now, theory of mind is across the board and universal, with the exception, and it works universally as follows, with the exception of children who are severely autistic. Okay, but we're going to talk about normally developing children. So what happens is like this. Until the age of 5, 4 is that transitional year. Some kids yes, some kids no. But until the age of 5 generally, you will not expect a child to understand that someone else has different thinking than they do. Okay, they cannot understand that someone else could be thinking something different. So you will test your child, and you can all go home and do this. It's lots of fun. You do this to a 3-year-old, they will always fail this test. You do it to a 5-year-old, they will always pass this test. Some that 4 may or may not. Okay, so the test is as follows. This is Sally and this is Anne. Feel free to name them whatever you want. You do not have to be, but this is the classic test. Okay, Sally and Anne are playing with a ball. Okay, my little ball here. Sally and Anne are playing. They're enjoying themselves, right? Look, they're playing. Oh, how fun is it? Is it fun? You think it's fun when Sally and Anne are playing with the ball? Yeah, they're having a good time. They've been playing, taking turns. They've been kicking it. They've been throwing it to each other. It's been great. Okay, so now Sally and Anne put the ball into Sally's box. Now, the one problem with this box is that you can see where it is. Okay, you want to kind of construct a box. I just didn't have time this morning. If I could tell you how busy I am, you wouldn't possibly believe it. So I ran out of my house. I didn't have time to make a box out of Lego that was a little bit more solid. Okay, but you want to have something where the child can't see what's inside. But pretend this is totally opaque and you can't see. Okay, so they now put the ball away and they covered the box. Okay, and then because it's time to finish playing. And then what happened is Sally went out of the room. She actually had to go use the bathroom. Okay, so she went upstairs, went all the way upstairs, because there's only a bathroom upstairs. She went all the way upstairs and she went to the bathroom. Now, Anne, do you want to know what Anne's about to do? Anne really wants the ball. So Anne is going to take the ball out of Sally's box, and she's going to put it into her own box, and she's going to cover the lid. Okay? Now, where is the ball, you say to the child? And the child says, in this box, right? He wouldn't be able to do it, but already a 3-year-old would be able to say, in this box. Oh, okay, right. So now as Sally comes back down, she's coming down the stairs. Now, you say to the child, where, and this is the crux, where does Sally think the ball is? Okay? Now, a 3-year-old will tell you that Sally thinks the ball is in Anne's box. Why? Because the child herself knows that the ball is in this box, so everybody knows that the ball is in this box. There is no such thing as a separate reality for a child that is under 5. They don't understand that someone else can have a different experience than they are having right now, because they don't understand the concept of experience. They don't understand the concept of your own mind. They don't understand. And they'll often say it quite like proud, in a quite proud way. She thinks it's in here, right? Because I know that it's in here, but we've done it sneakily, but she thinks it's in here. A 5-year-old will look at you like you're a bit nuts and say, she thinks it's in here, right? Because they understood the story, and they understood that Sally was away when this happened, and they understood that when Sally comes back, she has no knowledge of what has just happened. Her knowledge is separate to my knowledge, which is separate to Anne's knowledge. They can understand that. Before that age, they cannot understand this. And it's a very interesting thing for parents to kind of get their head around. Really? You don't know that when you just hit somebody over the head or you bit somebody that they're feeling pain? The child genuinely feels when they bite someone, they think that other child is experiencing the feeling of biting someone, right? Because that was what they just experienced. And it doesn't hurt that much to bite somebody, right? It feels actually pretty okay to bite somebody. It's an all right feeling. So they'll kind of even laugh sometimes when the child is crying. It doesn't mean anything to them, right? Or they'll get confused. You'll often see a look of confusion. You know what's really confusing for them? When you bite the child, right? Some people love to do that. They're like, oh, let me show you what this feels like. And then they bite the child. And what does the child understand? Nothing. Okay, the child just understands, my mother just caused me pain, and they're so confused, right? They're not able to extrapolate, oh, that was what she felt? No, they just feel like, now that's what I'm feeling, now that's what everyone's feeling. We're really confused by that. Why did that just happen? They cannot understand it, right? Very confusing, and they often will cry. And then you think, well, I'm glad you're crying, because now you know what it feels like. No, they don't. They haven't got a clue. They haven't got a clue. So it's a very important thing for parents to be able to understand. You can't rush growth. It's not possible. You can look at a flower as much as you want. You can't rush it. You can pour as much water on it, you'll kill it, right? You cannot rush growth. And you cannot rush growth in a child either. It's not possible to do. You can educate them, but they will grow in their own time. And this is one of those excellent, excellent examples of that. You can do it in all kinds of different ways you can show them. There's also, even if you show them a box that looks like it has, Smarties on it. This is another classic one. And inside, actually, there are like birthday candles, right? And you say, what do you think is in the box? Oh, Smarties are in the box, because you see the picture of it. You look inside, well, it's candles. And you say, well, what does Daddy think is in this box? Daddy has not been in the house for the last 2 hours, right? What does Daddy think is in this box? Invariably, they will say candles. Right? Because I know that there are candles in the box, so now Daddy must know it. It must be knowledge for everybody else. Why is it so important to understand that? It's because it gives you a small sense that what you think children understand, they don't understand. And how many times have parents said to me, but she knows very, very well. Even a 7, 8-year-old, she knows how she's supposed to be behaving. No, she doesn't. Okay? No, she doesn't. And she doesn't know what you know. That's the one thing that is for sure. Until a person becomes even around 17, 18, they don't have the same sense as what adults do. Okay, they don't have that. So giving is one of those experiences. When I ask children about what giving is, what it means to give, they usually get very confused. And they say, give what? They don't understand it as a concept. They understand it in a very specific, concrete way, right? And children generally have very hard time with abstract concepts. They have to be very concrete, okay? So it's also, when you're describing, when you say to somebody, well, I want you to be a helper, that is very confusing for a child. When you say to them, I'd like you to do the following thing, that is much easier for them, okay? Or I'd like you to help me, hard. I'd like you to do the specific following thing, easier, okay? Okay, so that's the first thing about children. And again, children are extremely self-centered, meaning they will take everything on as their responsibility and as their as being there for them. So every time parents have an argument with each other, children assume it has something to do with them, even though it's an argument about their mother-in-law, right? It's an argument about something that has nothing to do with the child. Children invariably, when I talk to them, because I work with children, when I talk to them, they assume that has something to do with them. They didn't behave 100% well. There's something they did to make parents upset. So when parents say things to children like, see what you did, okay, which is another cute little thing that parents sometimes like to do, right? See what you did, see what you've done. Mommy's very upset because of you. They thought that anyway, okay? They understood that anyway. They understood that I had something to do with it. They're just not mature enough to understand, A, how to make sense of all of that, and B, what to do next. Okay, they don't know what to do next. So it's not a good idea when you try to give children more of a sense of responsibility than they already think that they have. Okay? Okay, fine. So is anybody, by the way, I think what we'll do is I'll talk a little bit and then we'll ask questions. Does that make sense? Yeah? Because I know everybody always has questions. Okay. So how do we get a child then to be a giver? Right? If I'm telling you that it's generally children are so self-centered, how do we actually teach them and to understand how to be a little bit to see outside of themselves? So if we think about it like this, okay, which I think is helpful, children start off like this, okay, very, very, very narrow-minded and very narrow thinking. In fact, it was actually quite funny. Yesterday in my house, we had a child who was. Her mother, my children were very surprised by this, but we had a very good conversation out of it. Because they said there was a baby who was about 8 months old, and the mother was trying to give the baby some milk, in a bottle, right, trying to make a bottle for the baby. And the baby is trying to grab at the empty bottle, desperately trying to grab at the empty bottle, desperately, like just wants to get this empty bottle and is fighting the mother tooth and nail to get this empty bottle. And my children are watching this and they said, why? Why would the baby be doing that? There's no milk in there, right? Why is she not willing to wait another minute for the milk to be in there and then she'll actually get milk? What's the point of the empty bottle? She said, it doesn't make sense. And I said, but it makes sense to the baby, right? And they said, how could it make sense to the baby? I said, because a baby only knows that a bottle equals a no longer hungry tummy. Now I feel this feeling, and I know that bottle equals somehow fulfilling that need. I'm not aware that waiting or delayed gratification, right, delaying my gratification is going to equal greater gratification. I think that, and my children thought about all kinds of different things that they experience in that way as well, right? And we had a really good conversation about it in terms of, so what do we not wait for? What makes sense to us? What made sense to us last year that no longer makes sense to us this year, right? Things that we thought was smart and sensible last year and helpful, we see now as completely unhelpful. So one of them was saying, I never used to like to get into bed, and now I love getting into bed, right? And I never wanted to read, and now I want to read, and now, right? We had conversations about it, about the experience of growing up and kind of expanding your thinking, okay? So what happens is children start off like this. They slowly start to become a little bit more expansive in their thinking. That's the way we describe it in psychological terms. They become a little bit more expansive, which starts to include other people and other people's needs and their own needs in a slightly more long-term view, right, as opposed to that very short-term view. This experience is extremely short-term and extremely limited, right? They start to get a little bit bigger. And you sense that, right? You get a sense of the fact that they start to get a little bit bigger. So you get that sense certainly around 12 or 13, which is very convenient because it's exactly the time they're supposed to have a greater sense of themselves. But when they become 12 or 13, you will start to hear children talk about themselves in a totally different way, right? If anybody has children who are 12 or 13 or above that, you will have noticed this very interesting shift. 12 girls, boys 13, right? Obviously, this very interesting shift where they will start to describe their own observations of their own behavior. Fascinating. So they'll start to use language like, I'm not the type of person who does that, or I don't usually do those kind of things, or they may do that, but I'm not that kind of person. Okay, where 10-year-olds don't really describe themselves in that way. They talk about what they did, they talk about what they will do, they talk about what they have done, but they don't talk about observing themselves making their own decisions, right? It's a fascinating thing to start happening. And then you can have conversations with them about, what do you think about that? Because they're starting to broaden their horizons, not only in terms of what I do and what it does for me in that moment, but they start to think about who they are and who they want to be. Coupled with that, you will find in teenage years, is they start to think a lot more about what other people think about them, okay? They start to look at their own behavior as a representation or somehow a form of their own identity, right? And then they start to also think about how other people think about them in those ways, in that context. So usually I'm not that type of person, but that person is, right? So they start to think about other people and they start to think about how other people think about them. Okay, so what does this have to do with giving, right? It has a lot to do with giving. Giving initially, okay, when we think about, if we understand all of what we're talking about in terms of what a child is and how they grow up, and this is obviously a tiny bit of what children are, how they see things and how they grow up, but obviously this is the context that we're in. Children start off completely, obviously, not as givers at all. They'll give you a smile, and we often say that. She gave me a smile, which is quite sweet that we do that. The smile is totally for their own purpose, right? We sort of think that it's for us, right? She gave me such a gorgeous smile, isn't that lovely? Totally for their own purpose. I have one son who used to smile at the world. I mean, absolutely, like he was, that 8, 9, 10-month-old baby who would just, I felt like his face must be hurting him because he'd walk out, and sometimes I would actually face him toward me because I felt like he needed a bit of downtime because he was just smart. Every single person I would see it because everybody would be like, ooh, and they would smile back at him, and he would smile, ooh, and they would smile at him, everybody. Now, was he the most generous person on the planet? No. Somehow it just looked to him that was a good idea for him. He would just smile. And you know what? When he was facing me, he would often try to get me to smile as well, right? He was often just doing that. It made sense to him for whatever reason as a baby that's what he was doing. Did he grow up to be a much better giver than everybody else? No. He's fine. He's good. He's okay. But that wasn't what he was doing. That wasn't what he was doing. He was just doing it for his own purposes. That was it. So a child starts off very, 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 very self-centered. And that's good and that's right. That's how they were designed. Not because they were brought up badly, right, from day one. That's how they were designed. That's how Hashem designs us. That we just take in the beginning. And why that is, I don't know exactly. But I guess, to me, it makes sense that the process itself of becoming a giver is very, very, very powerful for our own human psyches. That is a very beautiful experience of someone who can start to see outside of themselves. But, and I caution you strongly, don't give them reason to question themselves because you've imposing things on them that they're not quite ready to take on, right? If you start talking to them in this frame of mind, when they're in this frame of mind, they get very confused, right? So if you start talking to a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old about other people's feelings, it's very confusing. No, that's not what we're feeling, right? It's very, very confusing to them. And they'll sometimes register that confusion. Sometimes that confusion, when you see a child being sort of overshot, usually they will react. I mean, girls and boys will sometimes react differently. Boys will usually lash out, okay, when they have confusion, when there's something. So when you see your child starting to behave for some reason, hitting people, especially hitting you, hitting the baby, hitting other people, it's usually because they are feeling a sense of incongruence, okay? Something is not quite right, what they're experiencing and what the messages that they're getting from outside. They're feeling a little bit confused by that. And therefore, we often jump to try to make them into something that they're not quite ready to be. At this point, they're just not quite ready for it yet, which is fine. How do you unconfuse them? Good question. We'll talk about it afterward, okay? No, we can talk about it now, actually. How do we unconfuse them? No, sorry, let me talk for another bit, and then, sorry. I'm confused as well. What am I up to? But meaning what they're doing is they're just showing you that you're giving them something beyond what they can handle at this point. Okay, now different children are different, right? Girls often will not lash out. They will either retreat or, depending on their age, try to please even more. Okay, so girls have this very difficult thing. Boys are not immune to it either. But girls have this thing called being people pleasers. Okay? They're very socially aware. Boys are less socially aware. Okay? Boys generally do not understand as much nuance socially, right? Boy, we always used to laugh because if I said fine to my boys, they were like, oh, fine. Okay, and they would go. And I was like, wait, no, didn't you get that I was like totally not fine with that? Fine. My girls are like, very confused by that. She said fine, she doesn't mean fine, which one should I go with here, right? And they're like in this state of confusion, and then often they try to overcompensate for it or cry because they don't know exactly what's going on. It's confusing. But boys are like, oh, good, right? And that's it, and they're off. So boys are less socially adept and less socially, not all boys, you can't in any way claim, right? There, some men in the room will be like, well, I'm totally not like that. But, right, obviously there's a continuum. So not all boys are like that. And there's some very sensitive and sweet boys and very socially aware boys. And there's some girls who are also really not, and they run. Okay, but in terms of what you're actually doing, right, is you're just sort of giving them a message that is incongruent. So how do you fix it, okay? So the way that you fix it, the nice thing about children, really, is that there's always tomorrow. They're very, very forgiving and very, very pliant and very, very dynamic. They don't have long memories. Really, they don't have long memories, which is beautiful, right? Beautiful when it comes to parenting. Because if you start something new, and it's an amazing thing how you can do that, right? You'd be like, okay, this is how things work. With adults, you sort of feel like, well, that's not going to cut it, right? But with children, it will, right? So if you've been behaving in a certain way, or if you've been giving them certain impressions of certain things, and they're confused, if you just start going along a different path, it'll right itself. It's a fantastic thing. It's a very, very amazing thing with children. They're very, very, very malleable and very pliant and very dynamic. And so therefore, they don't hold on to grudges, and they don't hold on to, for good and for bad, meaning sometimes you wish that children had a greater sense of who somebody is and that they can't just move in a different direction. But when it comes to parenting, it's extremely useful. And that's the way Hashem designed them, because parents are going to make mistakes. We just are. And we are going to miscue things, and we are going to totally feel like, oh, my children always used to say, when you come home from parents' evening, Mommy, we know what the conversation's going to be, because most of my children were not model students. How about that? Some of my children are, but most of my children were not model students at all. And every time I would come back from parents' evening, I would often overload them with my own feelings of anxiety about the whole evening, right? Being told, your kid is really not very good at this school thing, or whatever it is, right? And I would be like, oh, right? And then I would come back, and often the conversation with them would be a little bit heavy-handed and a little bit not really understanding where they were at and what they were up to, okay? And then slowly I would start to get right back into the rhythm of, no, I get who you are, and I know that you're going to be fine, and I know it's okay, and that's okay. And they would forgive me for it, really. Like, they're very, very forgiving. And that's also the beautiful thing about the parent-child relationship. They need us to be in control, desperately. Desperately, desperately. We, the parents, have to be in control of the children, okay? They need that hierarchy. And I don't mean control like, sweep the floor, mop the walls, or whatever it is that you say. That's not what I mean by in control. What I mean in control is have the hierarchy that Mommy generally knows what's going on here, and Daddy generally knows what's going on here. We, the ones that make the decisions. Where we go on holiday, we decide. What we're going to have for dinner, generally we decide. Where we're going to, what generally you're going to wear, generally we decide. How the house is going to look, we decide, right? Generally, we decide where you're going to go to school, we decide. Parents need to be in control of what's going on. So they're totally comfortable with you shifting things because they just go with it, because it's fine. So it's not a problem to unconfuse them, because you just start behaving in a different way and then they become unconfused. It's quite fun in that way. Okay, right. Now, the one other interesting thing about children about giving is that you'll also notice that children who are young, and even children who are adults by now, adults will often also do this because they kind of haven't quite outgrown this idea. But children for sure will give in order to take, okay? So they don't understand the abstract concept of giving for the sake of being a giver, because that fulfills my tafkid in life, right? My purpose in life, or that is something that I enjoy, and it really, expands my social network, and I like the idea of, right, all the things. Why, if I asked you, why do you give? You might give me all these lofty ideas. And the honest truth is you probably wouldn't even know 100% why you give, right? Now, most kids, if you say to them, why do you give? The pat answer is because it's a mitzvah. Did I get it right? That's what they say. Because it's a mitzvah? Yeah, right? Yeah, right? Good. But why is it a mitzvah? Okay, what is the mitzvah part of it? The mitzvah is to help us grow. What does giving actually do for us, right? Giving expands our thinking. Right? When we give, we're able to see a little bit beyond ourselves. Giving begets giving, and giving allows us to kind of expand our own thinking. That's really why we give, okay? And we give because it's actually ultimately is good for us. That's why we give. But the good side benefit of it is that we as human beings, if we're all giving, then we're all receiving as well, right? So most children will give in order to teach people how to give to them, right? And sometimes wives do that too, right? Will give, so a child will give somebody else something that they want in future. So they'll help them understand what one needs to do when one wants to give, right, to me. That's what you should do. And often adults still have that same feeling, right? I remember when somebody used to come, like a woman that I was teaching, mentoring at one point in Aish. So at one point she used to come to my house to help on a Thursday afternoon, maybe Friday afternoon, whatever it was. And she would come in and she would say, actually it was Thursday afternoons. This is what she'd do, like quite late. She'd say, I'll take the kids to the park. That would be a good idea. Why don't I take the kids to the park? I know. I'd be like, well, no, maybe now the kids need to have supper and kind of have baths and, right, it's not really good park time. No, let me take them to the park. That would be a really good help, okay? Now, again, she's taking them to the park because she wants to go to the park. She wasn't taking them to the park to help me, particularly. And that was quite childish, right? And that is the thing. Children will look to do whatever they want to do in order to give to other people. Okay, that is a childish perspective on it. And that's absolutely fine. That's the point. Children are allowed to be children. When we say something's childish, we don't apply that to children. We apply that to adults, okay, meaning it in terms of a negative perspective on it. As a child, they're supposed to be learning how to do this in stages, okay? So again, they will initially give the things that they want to receive. I mean, a cup, I don't know necessarily, but, they'll say, she wants chocolate milk. That's what she wants, right? Especially when it comes to babies, right? They'll often say to the mother, no, she wants like a sour stick. That's what she wants, right? Oh, do you want a sour stick? Okay, if she's having one, all right. But, the point is that that's what they're trying to do, which is great and it's gorgeous and it's fine. Don't yell at them. That's what I mean by don't, expect something different of them. Don't say to them at that point, that's not really nice, okay? Because that's not good for the baby. No, you're giving that so that you can get it back. That's not the conversation that you want to be having with them, okay? Allow them to give in a way that is a little bit, but really more than anything, in order to be a giver for a child, they need to have a receiver, okay? And that's where you come in. That's the best thing that you can be. Is not, yes, a role model is good. So if you give, then that's good. But guess what? They don't necessarily learn that. Do you see how many guests Mommy has for Shabbos lunch? Yeah, you're right. So that's because I'm giving to the community. Great. I mean, what does that have to do with me, right? It doesn't mean anything to a child. It really doesn't. You cook. That's what you're supposed to do. I eat. That's what I'm supposed to do. Like, what my kesher? What's the difference, right? It doesn't mean anything to them. And they don't really understand what work and what effort. That doesn't mean anything to them. But so being a role model is good. It's nice, giving to the children and noticing and giving to somebody else and wanting to give a gift. That's very nice. Okay, that's good. But more than anything, the way that you encourage giving is by being a good receiver. Now, often we parents are not good receivers. We're not. We're not good at that, right? So we want something different than what they want to give us, right? So they want to give us hugs and kisses and loving, right, while we're in the middle of talking on the phone to our solicitor or whatever it is, or something that's not really that we would feel appropriate. And often we are not good at receiving. Sometimes we're good at it. Sometimes a child will make, a scrabble something and give it to us, and we'll be able to say, thank you. I will now put this in a special place and I will have it forever, right? When a child makes us a gift, because we can kind of sense that. But often as children get older, we don't enjoy their gifts as much as we could. We are not receiving as well as we possibly could. That's probably the most important thing to work on in terms of getting your children to want to give. Also, being a role model, and we'll talk about that in a second, what I mean, a better role model, and B, being that receptacle, because nobody will pour if there's nothing to pour into, right? And we also often describe giving as being a little bit of a vacuum cleaner, and like also almost like a demand, what's it called? A supply and demand kind of chain. It's kind of, life teaches us about life. The truth is the most fundamental thing, breastfeeding your baby, most fundamental in terms of what life is a great example of this, right? The more that a child receives, and the more that a mother has to give, right? And the more that a mother doesn't give and she needs the child to receive, the more pain the mother will be in, right? That's just the natural way of it. Not being able to give your child milk is an extraordinarily painful experience for anybody who, right, obviously the women who have gone through that. And it's true for all human life. We do have a natural tendency to want to give, even though we're young and even if we're very self-centered. As soon as we start to kind of open our eyes, there will be that natural tendency to want to give. And it will all depend on what is available to give to. If a parent becomes available as a receptacle, as a receiver, then the child will tend to want to give. Okay, now often children really get it wrong. They really want to give. They want to. They want to give to their friends. They want to give. They don't know how. They don't know how to give in that way, right? So they go over to their friend and they give them a big wet kiss, right? And the child is like, get off of me now, right? Whatever you're doing, just don't do it now, right? And they feel like they want to have that kind of experience, and it's not being received very well because they don't know how to do a lot of things, okay? And children are only children. They're trying to get it right. The most important thing that you can teach them is that we don't always get these things right, but we're working on it. We're working on it. It's okay. We're working on it, right? Yeah, sometimes people don't want to receive the gifts that we give them, but that's okay because then we learn a little bit from that. We learn a little bit, right? But you, as a parent, try to receive every gift that they give you, and it's easier said than done, I know. It's not so easy to receive, but the more you can be a receiver, so therefore sometimes we as parents, mothers, fathers too, a child will, we say, okay, can you dry the dishes? Child will dry 17 dishes, but leave the last 4, okay? And we get annoyed, right? We haven't really received the gift that they've given us, and we don't see it as a gift because you're like, their house too, right? What am I? I'm not the slave around here. Everybody should be doing it, okay? But try as hard as you can to look at the child and what they're experiencing. They can't necessarily do it for you, but you can do it for them. Say, what are you experiencing right now? And how are in your mind, you've given me a gift, okay? Because guess what? In a child's mind, it is the mother's responsibility or the father's responsibility to take care of the children. That's good. That's healthy and that's positive. We don't really want children to flip that role, to be the ones who are looking after the house and take a responsibility for the cleanliness of the house and the running of the laundry and the cooking of the food. I work with some children who have had to do that, okay? And very, very hard for them to find some sort of healthy experience with that. So it's helpful and it's good that children are receiving from parents all the time because they learn about giving even through their own kind of experience of it. They're very good at being receivers, children. Excellent at it. Excellent at it. They do it naturally, they do it beautifully, and that experience is very positive. That mother-infant experience is very easy, right? Because we don't expect anything of them, and we love giving to them, and we're very happy to give to them. But the more that we can be good receivers, ultimately, the more that we can, again, encourage them to give. Yeah?
I just want to say that I was a very good receiver last Thursday evening.
Well done.
Because I've been working hard all day. I'm a reception teacher.
Yeah.
And came home whatever time it was, because I went shopping after work. I don't know, it must have been about 6:30, 6:45. For the first time, when my oldest is 19, I opened the door, dinner was ready, they made pizza.
Right.
It was like, I really, really showed my appreciation.
Was there a mess around the kitchen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was
Good.
so excited.
Good.
I was like, I
Right.
can't believe it's the first
Right.
time I haven't had to make dinner.
Right.
I come home and it's ready for me.
But that's beautiful because often mothers will come in, and again, we're also human beings, and we get a little bit confused by receiving, especially when we're in a mother role. We do get a little bit confused by that because we often up the ante a little bit, right? And men and women will often complain to me about this situation where, the father will come down and say, it's Shabbos afternoon, and he'll say, did you want to go to bed? Did you want to, because, you've been working hard. Do you want to go to bed now? And the woman will say, no, it's okay. I've been working all day. I'll just work some more. I'll take care of the kids. I'll deal with the rest of it, And he's like, okay. And he goes up to bed, right? And he's like, what was wrong with that? And she's like, are you kidding? That was the worst thing that could ever happen. You were not supposed to just do that. You were supposed to stay down there with me. And he's like, did you say I was supposed to stay there? Like, what? Right? Because she's not. And again, he offered her to go to bed, but she couldn't receive it because often we like to up the ante, right? We like, no, I've been working so hard, right? I actually need a vacation in the Bahamas, whatever it is. But, but I need more appreciation, but I need more. And often when mothers come home and kids have made a pizza amongst red sauce all over the walls, we see the red sauce and we don't see the pizza, right? And so we often be like, well, that's very nice, but why couldn't you actually clean up? So you saw the pizza, which is obviously, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Being a receiver.
It did take a long time to wait for it, but 19 years. But that's
Oh, I see. But they got there. That's the point. They got there. But that's all right. 19 is about right, I'm going to say. 19 is about right. Meaning between 16 and 19 and 20, I would say that's about right. Different children will do it. Before 16, children are just about what's magiali, what's coming to me, right? And we often get upset about it. We say, well, this is the generation where they think that everything is coming to them. But really, I think this is the generation where parents are not receiving what their children are offering. They're busy, they're not available, they're not there. So that's kind of what's happening. It's a little bit more than that. And children are just being children. They're not being anything more than that, really. I was going to say something else, but I forgot what it was. Okay, that's very good. Okay, let's talk about people-pleasing for 1 minute now, okay? So children who people-please. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean anything to you, people-pleasing? Yeah, right? Like people who are constantly trying to, they subjugate their own needs in order to give to other people. Now, that's not true giving. Okay, giving in a healthy sense is somebody gives, another person receives, and the person who gives has a sense of having done something worthwhile for themselves, and the receiver has a sense of being full or filled up and can reflect a sense of gratitude toward the giver. Okay, that's a healthy sort of experience, right? For a second, I thought about what I was going to say before, and now it's gone again.
Not the giver being empty.
Sorry?
Not the giver feeling empty.
Yes. Okay. So right, exactly. Good. That's another point, is that the giver should not feel, the unhealthy experience of that is that the giver doesn't have a sense of, the receiver may have a sense of feeling full, but the giver doesn't have a sense of having accomplished whatever it is that they wanted to accomplish, and they feel like they need to do more and more and more and more and more. Now, generally, and so people pleasers are people who will subjugate, again, their own needs, repress their own needs, and from a Freudian perspective will say, well, it's okay if I don't have a shirt because I'll just give it to somebody else. Or there was once, I used to definitely be a people pleaser. When I was younger, not a question. I was a people pleaser. I thought that people would only like me if I gave them things. So I would give all of my shalach manos away. I would give remember once we went to, my sister and I would go to get ice cream, and my sister was in a wheelchair, so we would go and get ice cream. She's very intelligent, very clever, but has CP, she's in a wheelchair. So we used to go get ice cream every Sunday, and there was this little old lady in the corner, and she said to us, do you have any food? Do you have any money for me? Because I'm hungry. Well, that was amazing for me. I was like, yes, I do have money for you, right? And my sister was like, well, why don't we go get some ice cream and then we'll give her the change, right? We'll give her some money. I was like, no, why should we have anything if she doesn't have food, right? Why should we do that? Now, not understanding that an adult should never, I was 8 years old, never ask an 8-year-old for money, right? I mean, highly inappropriate for an adult to be asking a child for any kind of thing like that. And I'm very quick and very careful to tell that to children. Adults should not be asking, not your parents, and not maybe your grandparents or your aunt and uncle, but a random stranger should never ask a child for help. No, not at all, not appropriate, okay? That's a huge safeguarding issue. No way should a child be asked for help and a child say, oh, okay, I'll go and help you. I'll come to your house, I'll get in your car. Never, right? You must teach your children you never do that. Adults should not ask you for help. If an adult asks you for help, you have to say, I need to ask my mother. I need to ask my mother or my father, or there's another adult over there, why don't you ask that adult for help, okay? Never should a child feel that they are doing that. But in my world, that was like I'd struck gold, right? Because I could give all of my money away and feel I didn't even have any ice cream and do it. And my sister argued with me and she said, no, I don't want to do that. She said, it's okay to give her money, but not all of our money, not everything that we have. And I just couldn't understand it. Obviously, there was another lady that came along who knew us, who got involved, who said, sorry, what is happening here? Because she could see me and my sister arguing, and she was like, are you guys okay? And we said, well, I said, well, this lady wants money, and she obviously got involved in it and said, no, that's not happening. You talk to an adult, you don't speak to a child. Even back then, they understood that. But again, I was a real people pleaser. And I remember the experience of feeling like people won't like me if I don't give them things, right? If I don't give people what they want, then they won't like me. That is not giving, okay? And I got myself into some serious trouble in life because of that. Nothing that dramatic or tragic, but in terms of my own experience of life, it was very difficult. So be aware that if a child is a people pleaser, if you have a sense that they're giving away too much, they're too good and kind, and you know how if a child like that, boy, did they get positive attention as a result of it, right? Oh, she's so lovely. She will give everybody her everything. She's so good, because we kind of panic as parents or as other adults, and we feel like, well, if we don't see a sense in a child that they're a giver, then they'll never be a giver, okay, which I'm here to tell you, it ain't true. Let children be children. They don't have to be massive givers. And somehow when we do see that sense of, no, the real givers, oh, look, she's such a giver, she's amazing, what a gorgeous girl, okay? At some point, we people pleasers start to resent people, okay? Because they sap us of all of our energy. The giving to other people is not energizing, it's draining, okay? Because it has to keep happening and keep happening and keep happening. And it's a very difficult experience. So you'll see a child like that will start to behave, maybe not kick or yell or scream or behave badly in class, because I would never do something like that. But what I did do is shut off. Certainly my relationship was with my mother. My relationship with my mother was terrible because I just, again, got overloaded and confused and felt very empty and a little bit lost, really. What am I supposed to keep doing? How am I supposed to keep this up? Okay? And I don't remember those words actually even formulating in my head, but it was my underlying experience. So if you notice that a child is too good, okay, too much of a giver, too much constantly giving to other people, question that in the child as well. Talk to her, usually her, maybe him, right? Tell them, you don't have to do that. My sister was a lot healthier than I was, a lot healthier. She said, no, that's okay. We can go get ice cream, and we'll make sure we'll get less ice cream maybe than we would have gotten, and then we'll give the lady what we need. I mean, it wasn't appropriate, but it was still a healthier outlook on life. We can get things that we were supposed to get. And her argument was, Daddy gave us that money, so we need it. I'm like, Daddy would love it if we would give all of our money away, right? Well, thankfully, when we came home, Daddy did explain to me, my father did explain to me, no, that wasn't necessary. I know it feels like, but they didn't understand because my parents didn't get that I was, experiencing this. They didn't know. So I'm just trying to warn you, that children really are meant to be selfish, okay? It's great that we introduce them to the concepts of giving. And again, as a giver, that was what I wanted to say before. Okay, you got it. See, it comes eventually. We don't think about things too hard, it comes. So I was going to say the role modeling really the best role modeling is positive association with giving. Okay? If a child has a sense that you enjoy it, it's not stressful for you. Okay? Sometimes there's stress, but not overly stressful. And you model it mostly when it comes to the child. So when you say to a child, you've made a mess of the Legos on the floor, modeling giving is to be able to say, come, let's clean it up. Okay, I love helping and I'd love to help you. Okay, this is going to be fun. Let's clean it up, right? The modeling of lack of giving is saying to the child is becoming demanding. Okay, the opposite of giving is demanding. And we parents have a tendency to be demanding. We do. For the right reasons, mostly, because we have heavy schedules in life and we kind of need a lot of help. But the more that we can be giving to our children in a healthy, positive way, which is, that's okay. You don't have to clean up. You don't have to do everything by yourself. I can help, right? And I don't have to do everything by myself. You can help. That's part of it, right? We kind of just a natural sort of healthy rhythm to it. And you have a sense of that and you can feel it, right? When things are healthy and things are kind of flowing, there's a sense of it, right? There's a sense of it. And it feels nice to be nice. And it feels uncomfortable to be demanding. It does, right? That is generally the sense of it. So good positive role modeling for children, really, in terms of giving, is that there's a positive association with giving. It feels good, feels fun, feels nice. I like it. I enjoy it. It's nice. But it's okay when I can't do it also, right? That's that people-pleasing thing. It's okay if I can't do it, and sometimes I'm going to do it, and sometimes I'm not going to do it. And sometimes, you know what? I'm just not in the mood. But I might do it anyway. I might do it anyway, even if I'm not in the mood. And by all means, talk out loud about your experience about giving. And sometimes your feeling of rising to the occasion, even when you don't feel like it, right? Children benefit mostly from having whatever it is, whatever abstract concept we're trying to teach them, from having very positive associations with it. If they have negative associations with it, like it's too much, too hard, and always check with your children about your giving, right? We were having a conversation before about if you overgive to the community, check that your kids are okay with that, right? Check that your kids are all right with that. And again, obviously, there's a happy medium. You're the one who's in charge. Nobody else is in charge, right? You're the one who makes the ultimate decision about what you're going to give and what not going to give. But by all means, include them in the concept of we think about giving. We don't just do it until we're empty. We think about how we want to do it and the best way to do it. Okay, are there any questions? Sorry, I went a little bit over in terms of that. Anyone have any questions? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Anybody else read the book The Smartest Giant in Town?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Right.
My wife and I had a conversation with him because I was reading for kids and going, look, he looks so smart. And now he looks like a schlub.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is not the right way to do it.
Right.
And my wife
Right.
thinks my reaction is. But I think
No, talk.
it's quite shocking.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, good, exactly, right. So the point is, again, use whatever it is that you feel makes sense to you to broaden their experience of whatever concept is there. Great.
Any books that teach giving in a healthy way?
In a healthy way. You mean any children's books like that? Do you know what's a nice book? Is a book about the symbiotic relationship between, what is that book called? The worm is helping the, what's that book called? We know, it's like one of those Julia Donaldson's books.
Superworm.
Superworm. Okay, because there's quite a bit, because there's symbiosis. It's nice to teach them, symbiosis meaning we help each other. We help each other, that we often get, there's certain things that I can do for you and there's certain things that you can do for me, and we receive. And again, talk about that. It's not a good idea that I give everything away. It is a good idea that we learn to kind of enjoy other people. And often kids feel that as well. They feel so good about giving, they don't know how to receive. So receiving is a very important thing to teach a child how to do. So that, yeah, super warm. Yeah. But again, look around, look out for it. Go online, exactly what you're saying. Talk about, there are lots of forums about lots of these things. So, yeah. But by all means, what you're doing is great. Talk about it with the kids. What you think about it, what you feel about it, how you make sense of the world. That's how they'll make sense of the world. Or at least that's also how they'll make sense of making sense of the world, right? That's what we do. Meaning, because most of the time kids are making sense of the world and they can't understand what they're doing, right? They're like get confused and overwhelmed by things. And if you say, well, no, you're just making sense of the world, that's what we do. We just kind of figure things out as we go along, then they understand that that's what's happening with them. So that's a positive thing. Does that make sense? Okay. Anybody else? Yeah.
Yeah, so I have a 5-year-old and he's very giving in nature.
Yeah.
But he has a sibling who's just under 3 and she's not that way in nature, as explained for reasons. How do you explain to the 5-year-old that if he's good at what he's doing, he's happy doing it, but he gets confused that he just doesn't want to do it, and he's like, why aren't we giving her a hard time? How do you overcome that?
Well, it's always good to tell a child. Do you remember when you were 3, you saw things differently than when you're 5? And sometimes what's a great idea in terms of that is keeping a little bit of some record, like a drawing or a picture or something. When kids make things, it's good to put it into a file, even for the reason that children can understand, oh, that's so funny, I used to write like that. I don't write like that anymore. That's how I used to draw, now I can draw better. So they get a sense that people will grow up and grow older. And it's okay if somebody's in a situation where we're not enjoying right now, because they will grow up and they will get older and it will be different. Maybe you were very giving when you were 3, but you weren't great at other things when you were 3. And you get older and you get better at it, and other children will too. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. How much time do we have? None, right?
Last question.
Okay, last question.
Well, you said what you've been a really confused child, and you said what you didn't know, but actually given a lot. It's not a good thing. As I was saying, how you turn it and put
Okay,
it
right, good. So you just talk to the child, right? Meaning I eventually, when I was very angry as a teenager, so I actually, somebody came to talk to me and said, what's going on? And we kind of figured out that I was people-pleasing the whole time and I was burnt out and exhausted. And when a child realizes that that's what they're doing and gets permission not to do that and has a sense of the fact that they are doing that, then they can change.
Yeah, but you're talking about teenager, and I'm talking about
Little kid, so then it's very easy. Just if you notice that they're doing that, you can just talk to them about it. And again, it's not going to change overnight because they have a sense of it. But you can, children are much more available to listen to what you're telling them than teenagers are. So if as a child, you say, what, I've noticed that you think, sometimes we think that it's, if we give to other people the whole time and we don't keep anything for ourselves, that that's bad, that's an avera, that's not a nice thing to do. But actually, it's actually a pretty okay thing to do, right? Because we can't give over everything. And also I tell children all the time, how much do you think you're allowed to give? How much tzedakah? So most kids will say to me, you're allowed to give, if you have 100 pounds, how much should you give to tzedakah? If you only have 100 pounds and that's all you have. Most kids will say to me, 50 pounds. Okay, most kids will say, almost all kids will say, half for you, half for me. That's what seems to make sense, right? And when you tell them actually 20%, right? You're not supposed to give more than 20% of all of what you have away. You have to give 10% to tzedakah. You're not really supposed to give more than 20% because really most of it has to be for you. You need to, in order to be able to give, you have to have something. You can't give if you don't have, right? I just say, well, I'd love to give you some crisps. Here. I can't give you crisps if I don't have any crisps. So I need to have things for myself in order to be able to give to people. And it's very, very important to keep things for myself. And it doesn't mean I'm a bad person. Actually means I'm doing the right thing. Okay, so that's kind of how and kids will believe you because it's good, they do. Okay, right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sullivan. Amazing. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Please look at our website for upcoming things. We have a fortnightly share, ladies share, in the mornings in Edgware, and we also have a Mishma Thursday night. There's a regular Thursday night share. So those are regular things, and there's future seminars and things come pre-Purim, Pesach, etc. Please keep an eye on the website. And if you don't have your phone numbers or email address, please speak to Shani or myself, and we're happy to put you on our mailing list. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.